everyone, and welcome to our postgraduate information virtual sessions. In our session this evening, I'll be joined by Dr. Julianne Stack, Graduate School Director, who will be talking about fees, funding, and why you should apply. And before we begin, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping. So this session will be recorded, so it will be available on the MIC postgraduate pages in the coming days. Also, if you do want to have captions turned on, you can do so by selecting the turn on live captions and on your options on your screen.
The procedure is a little bit more complicated.
If you have any questions throughout the course of the session, you can use our Q&A function at the top of your screen. Just type in your questions and I'll put them to Julianne at the end of the session. So please feel free to submit any questions that you do have at any stage, and we will ask them at the end. So to begin with, I'll just hand you over now to Dr. Stack, who will begin her presentation.
Thanks for that, Pat, and welcome everyone to our information session this evening. So as Pat said, my name is Dr. Identify a research topic, the Graduate School Director here at MIC. And at the Graduate School, we look after postgraduate research students who, from the moment that they begin to send inquiries, to submitting their applications throughout their academic career until they graduate. I don't look after taught programs specifically, but I'm going to talk to you about all postgraduate programs here today. So, postgraduate study at Mary Immaculate College, and we're going to discuss fees, funding, and why you should apply. So why do a postgraduate degree? Is it that it is to make yourself more employable, to engage with a subject that you're really interested in, to possibly change your career in a different direction, to develop your professional network, to increase your salary potential, or possibly, and most probably, a combination of all of the above? There are a whole suite of skills developed at postgraduate level that are not as developed in undergraduate degrees. And these include self-awareness and the ability to identify your own training needs. So you are expected to be much more responsible for your academic development. It could be that you're going to involve the learnings that you need for your progression in postgraduate studies. You will learn research skills and various techniques, as well as research management. And what this means is your organizational skills, your time and project management, they'll be really honed, because usually you're juggling multiple deadlines in that there might be assignments due, you might have your own personal responsibilities in terms of family, hobbies, etc. You might be working, and then you have to really fit in then your time and project management and your research deadlines in that. Your personal effectiveness, including flexibility, the ability to kind of pivot your research plans, depending on if things work or don't work. You need to be open-minded as to what you're going to discover. And also you need to have a certain amount of self-discipline when you're undertaking postgraduate degrees. There is, as I said, a huge amount of personal responsibility that's required and expected of you. No one's going to be sitting down and making you do your homework, okay? This is really something that you are undertaking yourself for your own interest. Communication skills are something that are really developed and enhanced on postgraduate degrees, and these are both verbal and written. It will be expected that you will be able to speak about your research, speak about your assignment topics, and that you'll be able to write very clearly about them. And the kind of feedback that you'd be getting from your lecturers or supervisor, they will be helping you hone and develop and improve those skills. Networking and team working skills, particularly if you have group projects for taught postgraduate programs, as well as your career management and your knowledge and expertise of specialist topics. So these are, you might touch on some of these skills at undergraduate degrees, but these are the skills that are really, really focused upon in the postgraduate world. So there are a number of different types of postgraduate programs at MIC. So there are taught programs. So these would be something like Grad Dip, Masters of Education, and these courses usually take at least 12 months of intensive full-time study. And there are part-time options, and they are usually over 2 years. It's an entirely new methodology, programs blended and fully online, and individual programs will have different conditions of study. Research programs include research masters or PhD, and these programs are more subject intensive than taught courses, and they have a much greater independence academically because you get to define what is going to be your research question, and you get to define and decide what is going to be your research methodology, how you're going to pursue it. There doesn't tend to be a lot of taught elements in it. Some of the structured PhD programs have taught components, but what we call the traditional research masters or traditional PhD, there's no taught elements whatsoever. You are essentially learning on the job as you go. We also have professional postgraduate programs. These are almost like vocational programs, and they facilitate entrance into a particular profession. And these programs are recognised by official bodies within that profession. So the two ones that we have in Mary I are Professional Doctorate in Educational and Child Psychology, which is accredited by the Psychological Society of Ireland, and your qualification at the end of that program is that you would be an educational psychologist. And also the Professional Masters of Education, which is accredited by the Teaching Council. And this is a postgraduate degree which would license you to be a primary school teacher. So for you, I would advise you in the first instance to have a real think about what it is that you want to do, as in, do you want to conduct a taught master's, a research master's, a PhD or a structured PhD, or professional doctorate? And one of the things that might affect your decision-making process here is the course content, the duration of the program, and also the requirements of the dissertation involved. So taught master's programs, they have a significant number of taught modules, a 20,000 word dissertation, and usually take between 1 and 2 years. And as I said, that's the distinction between full and part-time. Research master's programs, this is very independent research. There's a 60,000 maximum word count dissertation, and this is a maximum. It's a limit. It's not a target. It usually takes around 2 years, but it sometimes drifts into the third year depending on your other responsibilities and how well the actual process goes for you. Our PhDs and structured PhD programs, these require that you undertake independent research to the point where you make an original contribution of knowledge. You're basically going to be discovering something. You're answering an unknown question. The final dissertation is of 100,000 words maximum, and it's usually around 4 to 5 years is how long this takes. Professional doctorate program, this is a combination of taught modules, placements in various environments such as the National Educational Psychology Service, CAMS, or the HSE. And this is a 3-year program. It's a very intensive program, and you do need a certain amount of professional expertise in advance. The different programs are assessed in different ways. So the taught programs are assessed both by assignments and the minor dissertation, if it's a master's program. The research programs, they're assessed so each year, the students undergo what's called an annual research progression. And this is essentially a sit-down panel with your department, and they determine the amount of progress that you have made in your studies over the year, and if that is appropriate for your stage of study. And that's every year, and it's really a supportive mechanism to make sure that no one is floundering, that the supervision arrangements are appropriate, that that everything is okay and as it should be. It may be that extra supervision with different expertise might need to be brought in. It may mean that you might need assistance in academic writing, and we have that provision in the Academic Learning Centre. We have a postgraduate writing support person. And the final examination is via your thesis. And for an MA, it's the thesis alone, but for a PhD, you have the thesis plus a viva voce examination. And a viva voce is basically an oral defense of your thesis and your findings. And you would need to be able to very clearly define what's your contribution to knowledge, as in like what's novel about your work. You'd need to be able to contextualize it within the field and, just really be able to have a robust academic discussion on your work. Professional programs are a mixture of all of those: assignments, minor dissertations, professional practice, and just a typo there, it ends up with a thesis as well. The taught programs in the Faculty of Arts, this is a non-fully comprehensive list. This varies from year to year. Some programs run every year, some programs run every second year. And if this is something that is of interest to you, I would advise that you contact the course coordinators to see if the course is going to run and, just for more information on the program. The MA in Applied Linguistics is a taught program, but you can transfer to the structured PhD in Applied Linguistics after 1 year if you meet the requirements of SAME, and similarly with the structured PhD in Contemporary Irish Studies. These are research programs with taught components. In the Faculty of Education, there is significantly more taught programs, and they run from grad certificate to diploma to masters, and there is a whole plethora of offerings in this faculty. I'm not even going to read through all of these, but and again, this list changes from year to year, and not all courses run every year. So again, contact the course coordinator pretty early. As you can see here, there are a number of programs that are research programs with taught components. So the MEd in literacy education, you can transfer to the structured PhD in literacy education after 1 year here, again, if you fulfill the requirements, the structured PhD in education and the professional doctorate in educational and child psychology. So I'm just including a PhD in German because they do have taught components. For research programs, essentially you can undertake a research degree in any of our departments in either faculty. So in the Faculty of Arts, you can see that we have departments ranging from drama to languages, history and geography, maths, media, philosophy, psychology, theology. There really is a hugely wide range. And I'll talk to you about how to apply for research programs in a few minutes. In education, we have 6 different departments, and that really covers the whole range of educational offerings within the college. So you would need to decide where is most appropriate for you. But we have research students in all of these departments at the moment. So how to apply? All information is on the MIC website. It can be accessed in a number of ways via the faculty pages, Research and Graduate School. So here, just the Find Your Program button. By Understudy at MIC, you can go into the postgraduate lists. Even in the different faculty pages, you can see here that there is these offerings, and under research, they all come up here as well. So I would really encourage you to explore the website, and eventually you'll get to where you want to go, and you'll get a lot of information on the various programs. So for applying for a taught program, when you click into, say here, taught programs, and you find, say, for example, an MA in history. So this is how it looks. So you'll have a brief program overview, a description of the program content, the entry requirements, and obviously these 3 sections here vary according to each individual program. There's usually a description of the key features, a little video blurb from maybe the course coordinator or past students, and I would encourage you to explore all of those resources online because they're hugely informative and they give you a very good idea of what it is that you would be undertaking. All of the taught programs are laid out in this same way, and they all have a how to apply section. They also have this very useful resource here about how to ask a question. So this is, it may not be live, but if you post a question on this section, it will be answered in the next little while. So for taught programs, so in the first instance, I would advise that you contact the course leader and verify the program is running in September 2022. And then you complete the application and make sure that you fulfill the eligibility requirements. If you don't, bring that up with the course coordinator in advance of applying, because there is a non-refundable application fee with any of these. And if you're absolutely going to be struck off for considered not eligible, then you know it's best to just not waste that money in advance. There may be some wiggle room. Sometimes professional experience is considered in lieu, appropriate professional experience is considered in lieu of exact qualifications or eligibility requirements. So again, start that conversation good and early. So you complete the application form for taught postgraduate programs. So as you can see, it says here, and the reason why I have this highlighted is because this form looks almost exactly identical to the one that we have for research postgraduate programs. So make sure that you fill out the right one. And you send your application to admissions MIC by the exact deadline of the course. And there are varying deadlines for each individual course, so please investigate that carefully. Oh, the other thing I would say about exact deadlines, if you have missed the deadline, it is worthwhile sending an email to the course coordinator to inquire if there is any flexibility whatsoever. Oftentimes the answer might be no, but sometimes you never know, they may be accepting late applications or they may be willing to consider. An email inquiry won't cost you anything, it's worth a shot. For research degrees, such as a master's degree or a PhD, by research and thesis, the application procedure is a little bit more complicated. In the first instance, you have to identify a research topic or an area that you would like to research. So this could be that you've identified a question or a problem that you want to address in your thesis. It could be that you're going to investigate something that's completely unknown or undiscovered or unexamined. It may be that you're going to apply of your educational qualification, new question, or you're going to use an entirely new methodology to answer what is quite a well-known question. So there's a whole load of different things. If you are in history, you might be investigating one particular person, a particular era of that person's life. In English, it could be a group of authors, your expertise, and your research. Really, it is what is specific and appropriate for you. And this is usually going to be an idea that's been kind of burning and ticking away at the back of your head for quite a while. When you have an idea of what you'd like to research, the next step is identifying a supervisor. And there's a few ways of doing that. So you would, in the first instance, I would advise, so if you're interested, if you have a very studies, for example, or French studies, you would peruse the departmental website and you would look at each staff member. They have their own personal profiles online and their research interests would be defined and described on that. If they seem to strike a chord, then you would contact them and introduce yourself and give a brief overview of your educational qualifications, your expertise, and your research topic of interest. If you have a very preliminary research proposal put together at that point, then that might be useful. This is really your chance to kind of make a first impression. So as I said, do a little bit of research on the supervisor. If you're unsure, sometimes members of faculty's research pages, they're not hugely clear. It might be a good idea to contact the head of department in the first instance, and they may be able to point you in the direction of a member of staff who they know whose research aligns with your topic of interest. But it is important to remember that you can't actually proceed with your application process until a member of faculty has agreed to act as supervisor for your thesis. Okay, we can't accept you as a research student unless you have a supervisor, because that is just a key and absolute requirement for undertaking a research degree. The next thing then is to really refine and work on your thesis proposal. And so for a master's degree, you're talking about an academic document of around 3,000 words maximum. And for a PhD, 3,000 to 4,000. And this document should contain the following. So a working title. Now you're not bound by any solemn oath to this title. It's not going to be your definitive thesis title. You can change that right up to the day before you submit it for examination. It should have your aims and objectives. If you have a very personal motivation for undertaking this research project, then it's a good idea to just state that, because if it is going to be something that you are investigating, that is a topic dear to your heart, you are going to have to come up with a strategy that you define in your thesis about how to maintain critical distance of that, and how you're going to be an objective researcher, and you're not going to be predicting or forecasting or almost implying that your conclusions are a foregone conclusion. So, it's a good idea to be upfront about your motivation upfront. It may not be a factor at all, but if you is, you need to state it. Your methodology, and again, this is going to be your initial plans at a methodology. It may get refined and honed as you undergo your research. You may need to make adaptations. You will, more than likely. And next, your substantive outline of the project. And this needs to be backed up by the literature in the field. You will need to show evidence that you've done some reading, that there is a gap in the literature into which your project is going to fit. And you need to show how this is original research, as in, like, has it been done before? What makes your work different from others? The relevance, who's it going to be relevant to? Who's going to be interested in this research? In that, like, where is the space into which this is going to fit? And also some projected outcomes of the project. So that could be something as simple of, nothing is known about this historical figure, I am going to shed light on it. Or I'm going to determine how effective this policy is in the classroom, you know, or this intervention, etc. So your outcomes are, is it effective? Is it not effective? So this is, you know, what you're going to investigate. If it is a good idea in your thesis proposal to show that you're aware of any ethical implications of your research. Now, this may not be applicable if you're working on a literature project or if you're working on a historical project where everyone is long dead. Chances are there's not going to be any ethical implications. However, if you're going to be doing any sort of research that involves human participants in the form of interviews, surveys, if you're a teacher working with your class, anything like that, you're going to have to get what's called ethical clearance from our research ethics committee here at Mary Immaculate College. And it is a good idea to have a good think about that when putting together your thesis proposal and just show that you have thought about it and that you're aware of it. We're not expecting a really polished, perfect ethical application or topic of interest. But it is a completely refined thesis proposal, but it does need to show really rigorous evidence of academic thought and endeavour, and also the relevant bibliography. So as I said, your substantive outline of the project and all of these, it needs to be grounded in the current literature that's out there. So we will want to see the evidence of that. So the next step then is you would combine all of the various things that we require for the application package, which is your thesis proposal, 2 academic letters of reference. So if you have a part-time job in a supermarket or something like that, that is not the kind of reference that we want. We want references from people who can attest to your academic potential or your academic ability. It may be someone who was your supervisor for your undergraduate dissertation, for example, or a master's dissertation. It may be a particular lecturer in your BA or your MA where you know them quite well and they can speak about it. If you're in a professional environment, it may be your principal, for example, who can show that, it depends if you're trying to show particular professional expertise or process until a member of faculty, then that could be suitable. Your academic transcripts, your curriculum vitae, and a €50 application fee to be paid via RELEX. So that's the link there, and your application form for research programs. So this needs to be signed by both yourself as potential student, supervisor, and the head of department has agreed to act as supervisor for you. Sent to the Research and Graduate School office, which is rgso@mic.ul.ie. And as I said, this application form is almost identical to the one for taught postgraduate programs. So please make sure that you use the correct one, because we'll only be sending it back if it comes wrong and making you fill it out again. So on receipt of the applications, the Research and Graduate School process all of these applications and they send them to what's called the Postgraduate Research Subcommittee, PRSC, who will consider the applications. They will make sure that people fulfill the eligibility requirements and that the supervisor can't accept you as a research student, and the outcome of your application will be determined, and then we will communicate that to the applicant. So moving on then from the application process, we're going to talk a little bit about eligibility and fees. So usually a relevant undergraduate degree would be a requirement. So if you wanted to do a PhD in English literature, you would be expected to have a BA in English literature. An MA is not necessary, but obviously desirable, but it is not necessary. If you're coming in without an MA, usually you would be registered as an MA student initially, even if you want to undertake a PhD. And the process is then that around a year and a half into the process, you would apply for a transfer panel to upgrade to a PhD registration. And that is essentially you kind of showing that both you and the project have sufficient expertise and scope to undertake a PhD degree. Professional experience can often be considered in lieu of certain qualifications, but that's very much dependent on the field. It's very much dependent on the supervisor and the program, and they will judge on a case-by-case basis. It's always worth asking. An upper second class degree is usually the minimum expectation for starting a PhD, but this can be navigated by securing further postgraduate qualifications. So if you got a 2.2 in your degree or less, then I would advise you to, in the first instance, undertake something like a grad cert or a grad dip, leading on to a master's qualification, and then apply for a PhD if that's what you wanted to undertake eventually. Next thing then is to really refine time study at MIC per year. These are research degrees now. I'm not talking about the taught postgraduate degrees because they vary enormously. But the cost of full-time study at MIC for a research degree can be anything from 1,400 and work on your thesis proposal. It can depend on student nationality, so non-EU students get charged more, and some programs are more expensive than others. So for example, in other colleges, fees for programs in subjects such as business and MBA or medicine could be closer to 20 to 30,000 euros. So there's a significant gap there between fees in one type of course and the other. And information on fees is available here. So you can see that this is from the home, study at MIC, there's a fee, charges and grants, and all of the fees for the different programs are listed here. Think about an academic document of around 3 fees, EU, non-EU assessment, etc. So all of that information is there. And this changes regularly, so I would prefer to direct you there rather than giving you an overview of exact fees at this point. So in Mary Immaculate College, we provide a number of different supports and facilities for postgraduate students. And the first thing I would mention here is our wonderful building here on the John Henry Newman campus. So this is just across the road, the South Circular Road, from 1,000 words maximum. And for a PhD, and in here, we have a whole variety of wonderful resources for our students. So for the research students who are engaged in full-time research, they can apply for individual designated study spaces, which they can keep throughout the course of their studies if they wish. And it just means that they're using the same computer, the same desk. They don't need to be packing up everything as they come and go each time. A lot of our students are distance-based or full-time employees, and they might only visit the campus irregularly, perhaps for a supervisor meeting or for something similar. And we have a computer and study room in the John Henry Newman building also, which is mainly for taught postgraduate students to use at any time they wish, but also research students can use it on an ad hoc basis. We have a lovely seminar room upstairs where we deliver research skills training or other research events. And so there's a nice infrastructure over here for that. We also, in recent times, have in the Academic Learning Centre a designated person to support postgraduate writing skills. And so this is a resource that if you do undertake a postgraduate degree here, I would really encourage you to make use of. The other things that we do in the research and graduate school is we facilitate your academic progression. So we, individual departments organise their own research progression panels every year, but we administer the collating of all of those and the noting of them through exam board. We, on a weekly basis during semesters, we deliver research skills training, and this varies from very practical academic support, such as kind of surviving to be your definitive thesis, preparing for thesis submission and examination, preparing for progression, to kind of more professional development skills, such as preparing for conference presentations, how to get published in academic journals, and then to more ones that are aimed towards developing your teaching pedigree, such as universal design for learning sessions, awareness of EDI matters in the classroom, applying for academic posts. We had a session on that last week. And then also very practical training, such as statistics training or in vivo training, which is a software package used to analyze interview transcripts. Something that we provide on an annual basis as well is mentorship for funding applications. So if you're going to be preparing a funding application for an external body such as the Irish Research Council or the Fulbright Commission, and these will be the two main awards that arts and humanities and education students would apply for, we provide a very structured mentorship scheme for the Irish Research Council in particular. And the Fulbright one, there's much less applications for that, so that's of a more ad hoc basis. So if this is something that you want to investigate, and the application window for both of these is September and October of each year, but I would strongly advise that you start thinking about these applications in the spring, and then it's a good idea to just want to discuss submitting an application next autumn. Pretty much April, May is kind of when I would be encouraging you to contact me on that. We also have a very wide range of financial supports for MIC, that because mostly for research students, to be fair, such as the Conference Travel Fund and our awards and assistantship schemes, and I'll talk a little bit about them in a minute. But there are a wide variety of fee reductions for first-class honours degree graduates from MIC, and they're known as the President's Scholarship. So, oh, sorry, I never actually trawled through that. I think I stayed on the last one. So these are our supports and facilities for postgraduate students that I've just talked about. And this is a discussion then of our actual, more an in-depth discussion of our postgraduate funding support schemes. So we have a number of awards that are presented to some of our top achieving undergraduates. So when they are told their results, then maybe a few weeks later, they get told if they've been awarded a President's Scholarship or a Gold Medal, Kieran Burke Award, Peter Kremen Fellowship, awards for excellence in teaching, Bonaventure Trust. You can't apply for these, you get awarded them on the outcome of your dissertation or your degree or whatever it is. However, we do have a number of postgraduate awards which you can apply for. So these include the MIC Doctoral Award, Doctoral Studentship, Postgraduate Studentship, Departmental Assistantship, and there are also occasional departmental scholarships depending on funds available. So they get advertised as and when they become available. And we'll talk a little bit more about those in a second. And there's also MIC Sports Scholarships. The President's Scholarship, as I said, this provides an opportunity to pursue postgraduate study at MIC at graduate diploma, master's or research master's level with a fee reduction for the duration of your chosen program, 1 or 2 years. So as I've specified research masters here because the fee reduction is for 2 years, which is the normal duration of a research master's program, but you can transfer to the PhD program kind of maybe halfway through your second year, but just be aware that your fee reduction only holds for the first 2 years. So 1,500 reduction if you have a usual postgraduate scholarship, which is her first class honours degree, but it's a 3,000 euros reduction in fees if you have received a gold medal award, which is essentially coming top in your class. Your scholarship offer expires after 3 years from the year of offer, but you know, just so keep an eye on that. If you do get it, you have a defined time period in which to use it. Our postgraduate awards, so these are doctoral awards, so these dates still apply, that it's a fee waiver and a stipend. So as you can see, our doctoral award is our kind of most prestigious. It pays the most in a stipend, and the doctoral studentship and postgraduate studentship have a stipend of 6,900 euros per annum, along with a fee waiver. So current and prospective MIC students can apply for these schemes. Apologies, I think I have not the scheme for next year, which is 22-23, is going to be advertised next week. So please keep an eye on our social media channels and on the Research and Graduate School website, and the new information will be up there at this point. Departmental assistantships are awarded by individual departments, and they include a fee waiver and a 6,900 euro stipend. And they also have associated departmental duties. So these can be along the lines of tutorials, they could be administration work. It really depends on what the head of department needs. It works out as around an average of 5 hours a week maximum of duties, but it varies within the individual departments, as you might have some weeks that are quite busy and some that are really not busy at all. As I said, these informations are going to be advertised next week. So, and it's going to be up here on this page here, scholarships, funding and fees. So that's under research supports. And as you can see, there's information on these scholarships, the structure of our studentships, and then these are examples of last year's kind of ad hoc and individual awards. The other thing that I would like to draw your attention to is this here, this provision for grant aid and SUSI. So this is a government-run scheme, a support system for providing grants to students who want to undertake further study. So eligibility depends on your nationality, your residency, the course, your family income, your individual income, and the maximum period of grant assistance applies. So I don't have a huge amount of information on that, but it is worthwhile investigating it to see see if you are eligible or not. So that's kind of a whistle-stop tour of introduction to postgraduate study at MIC in terms of fees, funding, and why you should apply. So I'm here now for questions and very happy to answer same.
That's great, Julianne. Thanks very much for that. I think that was a very comprehensive overview of everything that's available at MIC. Might just begin, I suppose, with a broad question, Julianne. I suppose, in general, I suppose, what makes MIC a good place to do a postgraduate program?
You know, it's such a collegial, supportive environment. So MIC is no way the largest higher education institution in Ireland. We never purport it, but I think our size is actually one of our strengths. So when you come in, you will know your lecturers by name, you will know your supervisor, you'll know your departmental colleagues. And we have a small team in the research and graduate school. We're very hands-on with our students in terms of we have orientation, we have cohort meetings, and we have a lot of kind of surround and support services. So I have heard from many students who have had experience in different HEIs for different programs and also staff members, and they all speak very strongly about the really supportive and collegial atmosphere that we have. It's a very personal experience. Aligned with that, though, people are paying money to undertake a higher degree, and we have a very high standard of academic excellence amongst both our lecturers, amongst our supervisors, amongst your fellow postgraduate students. We do expect a high level of academic performance. But you will be surrounded by excellent lecturers. We have good research facilities in the John Henry Newman building. Having undergone a PhD myself, I can tell you absolutely that these lovely desk services are not available in every other institution. So yeah, I think it's kind of our support, our personal structures, and our academic excellence is kind of what is making MIC special.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good anyway, Julianne. I suppose the nuts and bolts of it then, I think you mentioned maybe for some of the thought programs about to check the website for deadlines, but just maybe you might talk a little bit about submission deadlines for research programs. How exactly does that work?
Okay, so we don't have hard and fast deadlines on when we accept submissions and applications. We have two hard and fast starting times. So research students on traditional PhDs or traditional research masters can start their programs of study in either September or January of each academic year. If you were going to start a PhD or a research master's this coming September, I would advise that you would have your research application package into us in the Research and Graduate School by kind of early July, because this allows time for review by the office, return to you if we're missing any details, and then remote consideration by the Postgraduate Research Subcommittee. Because you have to bear in mind that people are in and out of availability over the summer months. So the start of July. Similarly, to start in January, it's kind of the end of January that semester 2 normally starts. I would be advising that you'd have your application package into us by kind of maybe the start of December, because again, that gives us time to have it all set up and ready for review by PRSE either in mid-December or mid-January, depending on it. Some of the structured programs, they might have a deadline, and they have very strict deadlines of when you can actually start, because they have taught components that will start, in week 2 or 3 or whatever of the semester. For the research ones, if you did end up starting a week or 2 into the semester, it's no big deal there. But if in doubt, just contact our office or contact the course coordinator and we can advise more on that.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, Julianne. Maybe just a follow on from that, then you obviously mentioned structured PhD programs and then research PhD programs. Maybe for people who aren't that familiar with the difference between the two, do you want to just maybe talk a little bit about that, Julianne?
Sorry, can you just say that again once more, Pat? It just blipped.
Yeah, sorry there. Yeah, so we're just, you mentioned structured PhD programs and you also mentioned research PhD programs.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe just to elaborate a little bit on the difference between the two of them.
Okay, so we have going to shed light on it, or I'm going a certain amount of taught elements for their first year and sometimes into their second year. So you'll have assignments, you'll have lectures on things like research methodology, epistemology, etc., whatever is relevant for the discipline. And those assignments have to be done, and you have to have a certain QCA to be continuing into the different years. At the end of the day, to get awarded your PhD, it's still going to be on your research thesis at the end of it, of a structured PhD program. There are often exit routes such as a grad dip, or you may choose to take a lesser degree and just complete a minor dissertation and end up with a taught master's. For a research PhD, or a traditional PhD as we call it, there are no taught elements, and your whole focus is on preparing your thesis at the end. So it can be very suitable for someone who does not have an MA or is coming back to education after a long gap, that they may either do a taught MA first and then go into a traditional PhD, or perhaps a structured PhD might be an option for someone in that. But for any PhD program, the final outcome has to be a thesis that has an original contribution to knowledge. So there's no taught PhD, if you get me.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a good explanation of the differences between the two. Then just, I suppose, going on to your presentations, you obviously mentioned the role of the supervisor, Julianne. You might just talk a little bit about what, I suppose, the role of the supervisor is, and how, I suppose, as a prospective student, you go about identifying a supervisor.
Yeah, I'd like the relationship between a student and their supervisor is really one of the key indicators of success in a PhD program. In the first instance, you need to kind of do a little bit of legwork here in terms of, okay, so this is my research topic, this is what I'm interested in. Can I identify a person or persons in this department or in this institution that aligns with that? Then you would contact them to see if they are interested in taking on a new student. Some of our very research active supervisors, they have a lot of students on books at the moment, and they just may not have the capacity. If you do not take the time to kind of have investigated their research interests or put together, kind of a decent introduction for yourself, any ethical implications, I would put a bit of time and effort into preparing your email to them, like as a general introduction. The next stage is then usually that they would read, the bit of work that you've sent them and kind of said, yes, I am interested in exploring this further or not. And if they are, usually then they might ask for a more detailed thesis proposal. If you've sent them quite an advanced thesis proposal, they may ask that you meet either virtually or here on campus. And I think that's a really important meeting because you'll get a good vibe of the chemistry between you. Like if you meet someone and you just kind of click and you can talk well about your research, and it's a good idea to have an idea of how you best work. Do you need someone kind of saying, this is going to be your deadline, or I expect this from you now? Do you need someone kind of chasing you a little bit, or are you kind of, yep, I'll come back to you when I have chapter 1 done? So have an idea of how you work best, because as that supervisor-supervisee relationships develop, you may need to have 1 or 2 uncomfortable conversations, as in, I'd really appreciate more support on this, or I need this type of feedback. And so a certain level of self-awareness is involved there. Over the course of your PhD, your supervisor their role will change. At the start, a lot of support may be needed from your supervisor in guiding you through the academic landscape. They may be advising you on your writing, as in, okay, you need to improve your standard of academic writing here. This is how you reference. This is how you avoid plagiarism. These are the key authors in your field. As your trajectory continues, or as you kind of continue through your PhD, it would be expected that you would be beginning to contribute more to this yourself, that you would be saying, oh, I've been reading this is where this is going, and they may begin to advise you on, how to get published, how to prepare for conference presentations. They will help you and guide you in structuring your thesis, in laying it out in a way by discussing with you what is the most logical way to lay out your research findings. They're not your proofreaders. They're not your person who's going to be picking up your full stops and your commas and things like that. It is more of a higher level of feedback that you'll be getting from that. If they tell you in your first piece of academic writing that you need to focus on grammar, punctuation, references, they don't want to be giving that piece of feedback every time you give them writing for the next 4 years. They expect that you take that feedback and then apply it to everything else that you submit therein. So there is a huge amount of individual and personal responsibility on you as the student undertaking a research degree. And that would be kind of similar if you're undertaking a taught postgrad and you're undertaking a minor dissertation, but to a lesser extent. Towards the end of your thesis, they would be helping you prepare the thesis for examination. It would be expected that they would read the entire thesis before agreeing that yes, this is ready for examination. And they will help you in navigating those final examination stages in terms of identifying examiners and preparing you for the viva. So I think that's kind of the other thing is it is important that you discuss with your supervisor if any dramatic life events are happening, in that the last thing a supervisor needs in their lives is a student who just disappears into the ether and doesn't respond to emails for 6 months or anything like that. Thesis proposal. Everyone is human. Everyone has lives outside of their PhDs, outside of their work. And unfortunately, sometimes people's lives take a very dramatic and stressful turn. And as long as you keep your supervisor informed of, you know, I'm having a baby, I've had a bereavement, we've all had an illness, we're having massive financial issues, and they know that you need to kind of take a step back or whatever, and you just don't disappear. That's, you know, it's kind of a grown-up, respectful relationship in that way, in kind of saying this is going on. And we do have the flexibility within postgraduate programs to have that sort of humanity and take that into account. So open communication within the supervisory relationship, I think, is really important, and also a willingness on your part to accept critical feedback and to take that on board going forward. It is extraordinarily frustrating for them to have to repeat that. I think I may have gone off on a slight tangent there, Pat.
No, I think that was some great advice there, Julianne. So we have a couple of questions have come in, and anyone that's listening, if you do have any questions, please feel free to use the chat function and submit them. Fiona wants to know, can prospective doctorate students apply for doctorate scholarships next week, even if they're not beginning the course until September 2022?
Yes, absolutely. Current literature. That's
okay. So that's affirmative there, Fiona.
Yeah, you do just need a note of support from your course coordinator that they're happy to support that application, because we need evidence that we have the supervisory expertise. You won't have started your research project already, and you won't have been accepted solely on the basis of your research plans. So we will need a sign off from Trace Brophy that, yeah, we will have a supervisor to supervise that project.
Okay, next one then is from Silky Johnston, and they want to know, or she wants to know, you said that the information for the departmental assistant would be up next week, but I was wondering if there are limited places available for this, and if there are any requirements when applying for them.
Okay, so it depends. Each individual department organises their own departmental assistantship competition. Usually departments can take on one per year. Sometimes they have the opportunity themselves to compete for a little few more, as in an extra one. In the first instance, I would advise that you contact the head of department, so whether it be English or history, and just say, this is me, I'm going to be applying for a PhD. I am aware of this scheme, and can you tell me a little bit more about how that competition is going to be run in your department this year, please? Again, it's almost like a job application, so make sure you make a good first impression. Don't be coming in with a, hey bud, how's it going? You know, dear professor, whatever, or dear doctor, you know, take the opportunity to make a good impression. You can attach any information that you have in terms of teaching expertise, your research, if you have someone signed up to be a supervisor. So put a little bit of thought and planning into that first email if you don't know them already.
Okay, that's good advice, Julianne. I suppose in terms of cost, Julianne, like, is there much of a difference in cost between doing a master's and a PhD?
So for doing a research master's, you will be expected to pay fees of approximately €4,400 for 2 years, and that is that's kind of how long it's going to take. Our minimum period of registration for a master's is 1 year, but it's very few people who would manage to get a research master's done within 1 year. So you are talking about 2 years of full fees. For a PhD, our minimum period of registration is 3 years. So 3 years of fees at around €4,400 would be the minimum outlay. We also charge full fees for year 4, so that's another 4,400. And thereafter, once you go into year 5 and beyond, it's €500 per semester. So really the difference in cost is the difference in the duration of the degree. So a research master's is going to take you around 2 years. A PhD is probably going to take you 4. Some people do finish it within the 3 years, but that is unusual enough, and you require everything to go absolutely swimmingly, both in life and with the degree itself. And you usually need to be able to devote yourself to it full time. And that doesn't always work out for everyone.
Okay, and just a follow-up question to that then, Julianne, I suppose in terms of paying your fees, can you pay them in installments or would you have to pay the fee all in one go?
The student fees office would be the best person to contact in that. I know you can pay them semesterly, and I'm not sure what is their decisions on allowing installment payment. I know, so yeah, I think contact the student fees directly and they will be able to advise you on the installment plans.
Yeah, no problem. Just have another follow-up question there from Silky Johnston. So I think she was initially asking about the departmental assistantships, and her follow-up question then is, are they available for taught MAs?
No, they're not. Those funding schemes, the departmental assistantships and the postgraduate merit awards, as in the doctoral scholarship, postgraduate studentship and doctoral studentship, they're only available for research postgraduates. The other thing is the departmental assistants, though the people who take up those have to be available to deliver their departmental duties during the normal working hours. So the professional doctorate students are not eligible to avail of that funding scheme. They are available to, they are eligible, sorry, to compete for the merit awards.
Okay, and I suppose a follow-on question to that then, I suppose how are the different scholarships or fellowships or assistantships awarded? So does it really depend on the grade that you got in your undergraduate degree?
Not on its own, no. So for the postgraduate awards, and the application form of that is going to be released next week. So that application form is modelled on the Irish Research Council funding scholarship award. So it's going to be, I think, like 45% on the applicant, which would include their academic record, their letters of reference, 45% on the research project itself, and then 10% on your personal and career training development plan. Okay, so it is quite a holistic thing that we're looking at a whole lot together. So your undergraduate degree, yes, it is evidence of academic excellence a lot of the time, but if it is not the top in your class, first class honours degree, that does not mean that you're not going to be in with a shout of the postgraduate awards. I know people who have had lesser degrees than that and they have received one of those awards.
Okay, and I suppose if you were unlucky and you didn't get one of the scholarships available at MIC, Julianne, are there other sources of funding available? I know you mentioned the Irish Research Council during your presentation.
So the Irish Research Council is the main external funding source that would cover all of your PhD fees and give you a stipend. However, if you are coming from an educational background, the INTO, ASTI, and the Teaching Council, they offer regular funding bursaries, and MIC students are very successful in those funding things. So investigate those. There might be smaller bursaries available from other kind of professional societies, and I advertise these regularly to both taught and research postgraduates over the course of the year. So I know the Kieran Barry research bursary, which is part of the Central Remedial Clinic actually. So they give a bursary for people with disabilities who are taking postgraduate degrees. You'll be competing against other people who are equally academically as good, but it's ring fenced for people with disabilities. And then, so there are other little ones that you can apply for throughout, but they would be the main ones, the Irish Research Council, yeah.
Okay, and I suppose if you do decide to do a PhD in arts, Julianne, I suppose what kind of careers are available? I suppose traditionally people might have seen it just as preparing for a career in academia, or is it a bit broader now, or what's the
Oh,
current?
very much so. So really, like, the government have a stated strategy of continuously increasing our number of PhD graduates, but that is not aligned with an increasing number of academic posts, and nor do they want it to be. They have a stated interest in increasing the number of people with very high form for research programs, but in general non-academic employment. So a huge number of arts graduates with PhDs. I'm just thinking now off the top of my head of people who have graduated in the last few years that I know. So there is someone who's an interpreter in the EU, and there's two of them actually. There's quite a number of people who are content creators for web companies such as Google or Twitter or LinkedIn, because you're a really good writer, you're a really good communicator, so that sort of skill. There's people working in archives, there's people such as myself working in professional services and other sort of support mechanisms. There are people working in, let me think now. So yes, there's a whole load of different fields into which though you have to work to frame your qualifications that fit it. So the thing about doing a PhD in your very niche subject area, and it is going to be very niche, okay? It's going to be very small, very refined. It would be highly, highly unlikely that someone's going to come along and say, I have the perfect job for you who has a PhD in Victorian children's literature, focusing on the representation of, girls or something like that. What they will look at and what they will be looking for is that they are looking for people who are excellent project planners. They're looking for people who have excellent writing skills, excellent communication skills, excellent critical analysis skills. Over the course of your PhD, I would advise you that you take the opportunities to build your soft skills. So get involved in organising a conference or some other events. Get used to writing about your work in different fora, such as maybe the RTE Brainstorm, which is like kind of an online blog. It's a very informal type of language, but really informative. Writing for academic journals. What else? So all of these sort of different types of skills, and just be thinking that, yes, I am working on this higher level degree. It is going to give me a very worthwhile qualification that I am absolutely going to pivot and use to gain gainful, interesting, and a well-paid job. But you will need to frame it accordingly to what the people offering the job have. You need to show them how you fit it, which would be kind of on the skills as opposed to the pure content.
Yeah, that's great advice, Julianne. So it's really the skills that you acquire during the course of your PhD that will hopefully get you jobs in the future. Our time is almost up, so I might just finish, I suppose, with kind of a general question, or general, I suppose, broad question to you. Just what advice, maybe for some of our listeners tonight, would you give someone who's perhaps thinking of submitting an application for a program at MIC?
We'll only be sending
advice you'd give to them?
Well, first off, I'd say go for it. MIC is a wonderful place to study. It's a wonderful place to be. This is my 6th year working here, and I really enjoy it. I enjoy my job. I enjoy meeting all of the students. For you thinking about a postgraduate degree, don't just choose a postgraduate degree because you don't know what to do with yourself next. Okay. Because you might think it might give you time to think about your next step. It doesn't. They're busy, they're intense. But absolutely choose your postgraduate degree if this is something that you're really interested in, if this is something that you want to use to progress in your chosen career, if you want to delve more into your research topic, and all of those sort of questions. But just don't drift into it. Make it a very active choice.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think that will bring our session to a close. So I'd just like to thank Julianne for a very, I suppose, thorough overview of what's available at MIC, looking through the fees, funding, and I suppose the reasons why you should apply for a program at the college.